Hello, and welcome to our Yoga Hero Teachers podcast. This episode is focusing on building confidence as a yoga teacher. There's a bit of a chicken and egg situation where confidence is concerned. In order to get really confident at something, we need to practice, and to get experience. Yet, lacking in confidence might well mean that we don't put ourselves forwards to gain that experience that we need. So it becomes a bit of a cycle. We lack confidence teaching, so we don't put ourselves forwards for teaching opportunities, which then further propagates the lack of confidence, which means that we're even less likely to go out and get experience. This podcast is about breaking that cycle. We'll look at how to put yourself out there, how to gain experience, how to increase confidence. We'll look at tricks to feel very confident when planning and communicating your yoga offering, and then when you're actually delivering it too. We'll look at conquering nerves and silencing that niggly imposter voice so that you can shortcut straight to getting really excited about sharing your yoga without feeling held back. If you're on the move, don't worry at all about taking notes. If you just go to the show notes at yogahero.co.uk/podcast2, you can from there download our confidence building worksheet. So on there's 5 easy tips that you can start doing straight away, like today, to build confidence as a yoga teacher. Okay, so that's yogahero.co.uk/podcast2. As I mentioned before, confidence usually comes from experience, but we need an element of confidence to put ourselves forward to get that experience. So it's a bit chicken and egg. But experience is not the only way to increase confidence. I think when teaching yoga, let's look at confidence as coming from one or more of 3 things: knowledge, content, and ability. Let's look at these briefly now and then in more detail to follow. So, knowledge. Yoga is such an incredibly vast, huge subject or practice that we can't possibly know everything about every part of it. And I don't think anyone would expect us to. Knowledge is how knowledgeable you are / how knowledgeable you feel. These aren't necessarily the same, about your chosen area or areas. And how knowledgeable you are about your target market, your audience, your yogis, and then how these 2 things tie up. Content. The content of each offering is a great source of confidence. So your class plans, workshop plans, course plans, retreat plans, etc. It's likely that as you get more experienced and more confident as a yoga teacher, your class plans or your offering plans, shall we say, might slim down or you might even stop doing them. But we're looking at building confidence. If you know that your class plan, let's say, will last for the entirety of a class, so you've got 60 minutes of content or maybe more for a 60-minute class, you're sure that the content is perfect for your target market, that you can read your class plan and understand it, etc., then that will really help to give you confidence. You're going to know that you have something that you can refer to at any point that will help you get back on track in your class if you've lost your way a little bit or forgotten where you're going. We'll be looking at how to make your plans give you more confidence later on in this podcast. And finally, ability. So your ability to teach yoga, or your confidence in your ability to teach yoga, is really definitely going to be from experience. So when we come back to talk about ability in a few moments, we'll be looking at how you can get experience even when you're lacking in the confidence to say, yes, I'll do that. You're lacking in the confidence to put yourself forwards. Now we're digging into each of these 3 areas, knowledge, content, and ability, in more detail. Starting off with knowledge. As we know, yoga is a vast, vast subject. Being an expert in all areas of yoga is really a very lofty aim. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's some going. So let's be realistic. Let's look at becoming knowledgeable in a section, in an area, in a part of the yoga practice. In order to work out where you should focus your efforts, it's really, really important that you know who you are, what your background is, where your passions lie, how you want to make people feel, what method of delivery suits you and your style best. And knowing all of this, you can really, really specialize and perfect your craft. Let's look at an example for a moment. Let's say that your background is that you're a tennis player, not a professional tennis player, but a very dedicated and very passionate tennis player. So you know how it feels to play lots of tennis. You know where aches, you know where needs to be strong, where needs to release. You know how it feels to be beaten, to have off days. You might know how it feels to win and be like humble smug. That's all your background. You're really passionate about tennis. You want more people to take it up, but to do so in a healthy way. So that means helping people avoid injury. So warm up properly, have good form, and stretch and condition between sessions. You're not the most technically savvy person. You much prefer teaching in person. You've struggled to get to grips with teaching and practicing yoga online. So taking all of this into account, you're likely to feel that you're most confident teaching yoga to tennis players in an in-person setting. You're unlikely to feel confident teaching yoga for dancers or climbers, for example, in an online setting. So, in lieu of or along with getting experience, you can and should gen up on your knowledge using your background and your passions to help you decide where to focus your time and energy. Just as a side note here, I really believe that there's enough space in the world for all of us to be yoga teachers because there's so many ways that yoga can be shared and so many people that need it in different ways. For example, one of your tennis playing yoga students might do yoga for tennis with you, or yoga for tennis players with you, but they might do stress less yoga with someone else, and they might take philosophy lessons, for example, with a third person. The way that we can ensure that there's room for all of us is to specialize. Figuring out your area in which to specialize really will be a podcast all of its own in the non too distant future. But for now, have a think about your background and your passions and where you feel confident that your knowledge is sufficient and gain confidence that way. Don't forget, we've got our worksheet to help you with actual action steps with all of this at yogahero.co.uk/podcast 2. Let's move on to content. Content is the actual content that you are teaching in your classes or your workshops or your courses or your retreats, etc. I think from experience that one of the things that really holds yoga teachers back, especially new yoga teachers, is the fear of forgetting all yoga poses, the fear of completely forgetting the whole sequence, forgetting who you are, what comes next, your left and right, etc., etc. So I think that if you can give yourself a backup plan, a plan B or C or D, then it actually takes away the worry of the what if. I think that if you have a class plan in a notebook or on a sheet of paper or on an iPhone or iPad, we'll talk about that in a moment, that you know that you can refer to if everything falls out of your head, then that element of worry is removed. You might not need the plan. You might not even get it out of your bag. But if you need it, it's there. And the worry goes. That's the important bit. With that in mind, let's have a look at how to create content that you are really confident in. i.e., let's have a look at how to create a class plan. And by class plan, I'm using that as an umbrella term for class plans, workshop plans, course plans, retreat plans, etc. So let's have a look at how to make a class plan that you can have in your back pocket that is really, really useful for you. So potentially, needless to say, all of this is in your worksheet available at yogahero.co.uk/podcast2. So don't worry about taking notes if you're on the go. But your class plan, your class plan needs to include your intention and or theme for the class, the length of class, who this class is for. Remind yourself of the name of the playlist if you've created a playlist to go alongside the class. And then in terms of the actual asana, in terms of the actual sequence, this just needs to be in any format that you can follow. It doesn't need to be for anybody else. It might be that no one else ever sees your class plans and they really don't need to understand them, in my opinion. So it just needs to be absolutely perfect for you. Something that you can reference quickly and understand on the go as well, in case you lose your way in the middle of a sequence or in the middle of a class. So your class plan might be written out with the names of the asanas and with detailed transitions. You might just use the Sanskrit names of each asana. You might create yourself a little short code. This is what I've done. So for example, if I've got a 3-legged dog, I just write down 3LD. Anjaneyasana is just Anja. on my sheet, on my sequences. So you might create a short code that only you understand. You might draw stick people. That's a really, really popular way of planning classes. And I think that's something that I would do if I could draw or if I could understand my own drawings, but I can't. So I use a short code. So yeah, just to recap on that, the actual sequence, how much you write that out, how in-depth it is, and in what sort of format it is, whether it's in words or drawings or bullet points or sentences or what, that is completely up to you. It just needs to be something that's clear to you and that you can reference quickly and understand quickly. Your class plan also wants to include sections that you can take out if you're running out of time. So I would really recommend over planning a class. So let's say you've got a 60-minute class, maybe write out a class plan that you think will take like 65 or 70 minutes, something like that. But have sections and mark them out that you can take out if you're running out of time. For example, a whole flow, and obviously that would be on the left side and the right side, or a whole sort of seated section, or a whole supine section, something like that, where the overall sequence still works without that. But if you're going quicker than you'd anticipated, you don't need to be, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? How am I going to fill this extra time? It's already filled. It's already there in your class plan. But if you're not running quickly, then you don't have to teach that, and it's still a great class. And lastly, in your class plan, you might want to include in there a nice quote for Shavasana. Okay. So I think that's everything about our class plans. Intention and or theme, the length of the class, who it's for, name of a playlist if you've created one, a sequence that you can follow and reference quickly, sections that you can take out if you're running out of time, and potentially a quote or something nice and inspiring for Shavasana. Also thinking about content, I do often get asked whether a class plan needs to be brand new for each class. So yoga teachers will often say that they have people coming to their classes 2-3 times a week. What happens if those people are practicing the same class in that sort of 2 or 3 times in the week? And I would really say that doesn't matter too much. They will be feeling different. They'll have slept different amounts, eaten different amounts. They'll have different amounts of stress. Different things have happened in their lives. So it might be that even the exact same sequence might feel completely different for them. Also, you will probably teach it in a slightly different way. You might use new instructions, or you might swap the flow up a little bit, or you might remove sections if you're running out of time, etc. So don't worry about making the class brand new each time someone comes to your class. It's just not something that you need to be concerned about. I think if you've got a flow or a class that you really love, that you're passionate about, that you start to really get quite familiar with, that can really do wonders for your confidence. So I would say prioritize building your confidence over creating brand new classes for people. So just to summarize, how content can influence how confident you feel teaching yoga. Having a plan of action in your back pocket that you can refer to anytime is really going to help take the worry out of what happens if I completely forget everything. For me, if this class plan is on a sheet of paper or in a notebook, I really honestly think that you can leave that by your teacher's mat and refer to it if needed. When I was doing my teacher training, we would quite often just tuck the class plan underneath the mat so that you could lift up the corner of the mat when people were in child's pose or something and just have a quick look at it. But since then, I think if it's by your mat, I don't know. For me, it makes me think, oh, I've got a teacher that cares. They've planned a class and they're organised. So I know some people don't really like it very much, but for me, I think it's really not a problem. If the class plan is on your phone, your smartphone, or a tablet like an iPad or something, for me, I'm not too sure about this. I'm not quite so sold on it. I think even if you're referring to your class plan because you're so passionate and you want people to have the most amazing class, if they see you looking at your phone, they're probably going to think that you're on Facebook. And the other thing is that if your phone isn't on airplane mode, you probably will get notifications. So even if they don't make sounds, even if they don't beep, you'll probably see them. And whether you like it or not, that's going to pull your focus in a different direction. So my recommendation would really be to write your sequences in a notebook or on sort of nice sheets of paper, ideally not scrappy pieces of paper, and have them with you. So when I first started teaching yoga and creating my own sequences, I had a notebook that was full of my own sequences, and I had like a 60-minute class for a very windy day and a 45-minute class for helping people feel more energized, and a 75-minute heart opening flow, for example. And I just made sure that I had that notebook with me at all times. So wherever I went, I had a bowl of water. You really need water with you all times when you're practicing and teaching and speaking. I had my sequencing notebook, and I had my iPod or phone or whatever to play music. I just made sure I had those things with me at all times. And you might think that that is useful, and you might want to do the same. So just recapping on how content can influence and increase your confidence level. If you have a class plan that you know that you can refer to anytime, and you know that you will understand and that you can operate from, I really think that that takes the worry out of, oh my goodness, what happens if I just completely forget everything? I personally think that that's better on a sheet of paper or in a notebook. And I would definitely prioritize getting familiar with your class plans over trying to create new class plans for each class or even each week. We've looked at how building up your knowledge of your chosen area of yoga and your audience can help you gain confidence. We've looked at how your content of your offering can help you build confidence. And so now we're going to look at your actual ability of teaching yoga. So your ability to teach yoga and your confidence in your ability to teach yoga, I think, are two different things. In my experience, I've found yoga teachers to be unreservedly hard on themselves. I really have. Yoga teachers tend to be, or can be, I should say, can be people who much more lean towards perfectionism than being kind to themselves, which I think is quite ironic when we look at ahimsa, non-harm, often talked about as kindness or as compassion. In order to build confidence in your ability to teach yoga, first of all, we want to gain experience. Now, I mentioned right at the beginning of the podcast how we can be held back from putting ourselves forwards to gain experience because we're not feeling confident. But it's a real chicken and egg situation. So you just have to start somewhere. You just have to pick somewhere and start. And realistically, because you can't pull confidence out of thin air, you will have to start with building experience. So how do you do that when you're lacking in confidence in your ability? Well, here are a few ways. You could teach friends and family. Friends and family will either say, oh, that was completely wonderful. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. Even if they weren't very sure about it or they didn't really understand what you were saying. But having that nice feedback is really great for your confidence level. So that really serves us for our purposes. Or friends and family, it depends on your relationship with them and obviously on their personalities. But sometimes they can give you very brutal, very detailed feedback, which, okay, might not be great for building your confidence. In fact, it might knock it, but it gives you things to work on, specific things to work on that you can integrate into your next class and your next workshop, which will help you build your confidence. You know that you're improving, and so then your confidence grows. To gain experience, you could teach a free class. So sometimes that kind of overwhelming worry and concern comes from, what if people pay and they hate it? So if people aren't paying, that kind of goes out of the window. In our most recent podcast, Pricing Strategies, we talked about not devaluing yoga. So if you're offering free classes, you might do it as a one-off or a two-off or a three-off. Or you might say, pay as you feel. Okay, allow people to pay a figure that they thought that the class was worth. Or you could do it for charity. So it's not really free, but somebody's unlikely to complain and demand a refund if the funds raised by the class are going to a good cause. So there's a few suggestions there about how you can put on classes and gain experience without it having sort of financial repercussions if the class is terrible, which of course I'm sure it won't be. You could see if there's any studios offering a feedback program or a sort of mentoring program. So at Yoga Hero, we have a newly qualified yoga teachers program, which includes being able to teach pay-as-you-feel classes on our timetable. And we have experienced teachers attend those classes and give you specific feedback points that you can work on. If you can't find somewhere near you that's offering something like this, maybe you can approach some yoga teachers that you really respect and ask them to attend your classes and to give you some feedback. But just think about starting teaching in a way that you're comfortable with. I'm a really big believer in removing barriers. I don't think everything needs to be really hard all the time. Make some things or all things easy. Teach people that you're comfortable with. So that might be, like I said, close friends. It might be family. It might be your spouse or kids. It might be some people from your workplace or an old workplace, people that you really trust. There's no need to worry about 800 people or 20 people or even 8 people coming to your classes. Teaching 2 or 3 at first will just get you into the rhythm of setting up a class, writing a class plan, turning up, teaching the class, keeping to time, getting some feedback. And more often than not, after yoga teachers have taught a class, no matter how nervous they are, they feel great. It's like exhilarating, the feeling of delivering a yoga class. So even just going through the motions and getting through the class can make you feel incredible. And then you've got a class in your pocket and you do another one and another one and another one. And I really promise that each one you do gets a bit easier. And each one that you do adds to your confidence levels. So just a couple of practical tips about how you can make teaching yoga classes a little bit easier. First of all, just write on your hands, left and right. If you're teaching in person and you want to mirror, then swap them over. So you'll write right on your left hand and left on your right hand and foot as well. Write them on your feet. Accept that you will make mistakes. You'll get your left and right mixed up. You'll put the wrong playlist on. You'll forget your flow. You'll say shit bones instead of sit bones. Excuse my language, but unfortunately I did actually do that in one class, which was terrible and also hilarious. So accept that you will make mistakes. It will just happen. It's how you recover from these mistakes that dictates how the rest of the class goes. Fortunately, in our yoga practice, we've got tools to help us get back on track after making mistakes like this. Deep breaths. Use your meditation practice, your refocusing practice to focus your thinking mind on what you're saying now and what comes next, not on the mistake that has gone in the past. Make sure that you take some time to prepare for the class, to settle into the mindset of teaching. So maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes before the class, you do some meditation, do a little bit of flow, reread your class plan, reread any promotion that you put out about the class, just so that you are teaching what you have promised people that you're going to be teaching. Maybe create yourself a little bit of a routine that you can do before each class. And it just really gets you into that mindset of delivering, that mindset of serving the yogis that you've got in front of you, doing yoga justice, doing yourself justice. And if you're the kind of person a bit like me, who's like always on the last minute and is always like, oh, I just wish I'd given myself a bit more time to prepare for this, then, okay, well, I'll share with you what works for me. I just pretend that the class starts 15 minutes before it actually starts. So if I've got a class that starts at 5 p.m, in my head, I'll tell myself over and over and over again that the class actually starts at 4:45 p.m. So that 15 minutes is that kind of pre-class ritual, little bit of movement, little bit of meditation, just sense checking. What is this class? What am I teaching today? What have I planned out? Where do I want to go? And just a few quiet moments as well. That's something that's really helped me. Maybe that will help you too. But whatever it means to you and however you do it, maybe a little bit of a pre-class ritual just to get you into the mindset of delivering your yoga offering. I really think that helps so much with building confidence, delivering a yoga class. So just to recap, your confidence in your ability to teach yoga is really going to be A, gaining experience, and B, giving yourself some credit. You can do this. Believe in yourself. We're about to wrap up this podcast. There's just a couple of bits that I'd like to mention before going back and recapping all of the points that we've made about building confidence as a yoga teacher. These kind of bonus bits, if you will help you hopefully gain confidence, but also help with all aspects of being a yoga teacher. And it's really to prioritize looking after yourself, making sure that you're eating well. As a yoga teacher, you tend to work when it's inverted commas, normal eating time. You tend to teach classes at breakfast time, at lunchtime, and in the evening. So making sure that you are eating and eating well, that you're not hungry. Making sure that you're sleeping well. I know sometimes that's easier said than done, but just doing what you can to sleep as well as possible. Make sure that you're practicing regularly, whether that's sitting in meditation or a simple restorative practice or a deep yin practice or a power flow practice, whatever it is, whatever you need, just make sure that you're practicing, listening to your body's needs and adding to your own pot of inspiration as well. And when you lose faith, when that imposter voice, that niggly imposter voice is saying, you can't do this, just take a moment and think about all the things that you've done in your life that have got easier with practice. And it's just the same with teaching yoga. Maybe there's a bit of a leap of faith at first to go out and get that initial experience. But then I promise it gets easier and easier and easier. Also, if you lose your way or struggle with that initial kind of leap of faith, just think about all of the things that might happen if you take the leap. You might create a business where you work for yourself and work your own hours. You might have such a warm, fuzzy feeling from helping people. You might X, you might Y, you might Z. But you can guarantee that none of those things are going to happen if you don't get out there and start teaching. So just go for it. I know it's easier said than done, but why not? Go for it. So to recap, we know that gaining confidence comes from experience, but getting that experience might not be the easiest thing in the world. We can build confidence by increasing our knowledge in the area or areas of yoga that we're passionate about. We can increase our knowledge of the audiences that we're serving and how our knowledge in the areas of yoga that we're interested in and the knowledge of the audience match up. How can the audience benefit from the knowledge that we're going to share? We can build confidence through clear, useful class plans. So rather than worrying, oh my goodness, what happens if it all goes completely wrong? You can instead completely focus on delivering a class, whether it's from your sheet or not. You've got the sheet there as backup, so you don't even need to worry about it. And lastly, gaining confidence from our ability, which is A, getting experience. And we talked about a few different ways that you can do that. And B, it's just basically a case of believing in yourself. You can do it. I know you can. So, very, very best of luck to you. I hope this has been helpful. Don't forget you've got your worksheet that sits alongside this podcast at yogahero.co.uk/podcast2. And I very, very much look forward to seeing you in our next podcast together. In the meantime, take lots of care and thanks again for listening. Seeing as you're still here, I just wanted to take this opportunity to let you know about our BARE course, BARE course for yoga teachers. This is a course that is designed to help yoga teachers teach with passion, avoid burnout, and earn a fair living. It's a complete course that guides you through defining and refining your ideal yogi, creating an offering that serves them perfectly, of course, pricing that offering, promoting the offering and filling it up, and then actually delivering it. And by offering, I mean maybe a weekly class or a class timetable, maybe workshops, maybe a course or courses, maybe retreats, or another way of delivering your yoga knowledge to your yoga students. When your knowledge is really clear and refined and deep, and it is delivered to an audience that need it, That is the way that we can earn a fair living, a decent living from yoga without working ourselves into the ground. We're taking applicants for the course from midday on Sunday, March the 28th, just for 1 week. But by listening to this podcast, you can apply for one of a very limited number of early bare bird places. So the full course is £450, but an early bare bird place is 25% off, which can be paid in one go or over 6 monthly installments. I really hope that this course sounds great to you. Again, if you want to know more, there'll be a link from yogahero.co.uk/podcast 2. This course is really designed to be everything that you need to know, everything that you need, including cheat sheets, step-by-step guides, a list of useful tools and resources, plus weekly webinars, community check-ins, and then time with me and time with our other course attendees too, to help you really get that absolute most from your yoga teaching. If you want to join us, just head to yogahero.co.uk/podcast 2. Have a look at the bear course there and let us know if you've got absolutely any questions. But that early bare bird price completely disappears at 11 p.m. on Saturday, the 27th of March. So don't hang about. I'm very much looking forward to hearing from you. Thanks a lot for listening and take lots of care.